Get a thumbs up if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. I promise I will speak slow so you can understand me, okay? I practice this accent every day, and one of these days I'm going to get really good at it, you know. But we'll give it a good go tonight. Now, I've entitled this tonight, We Play God. The bottom line is whenever you put an animal or bird into captivity, you play God to that bird. It stands or falls by what you do. And unfortunately, I haven't met anybody that's any better than God at keeping birds. You know, there's always been an issue. You know, there's one word that I always say causes 99% of your problems, and it's been my focus for the last 20 plus years dealing with birds, poultry, every type of birds you can think of, and that's the one word: stress. 99% of your problems is caused by stress. Stress from the environment, stress from nutrition, and stress health-wise with different conditions. Now, I liken the bird's immune system to a block of flats. Now, every bird is a block of flats, and it's got different sizes of accommodation. It's got 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom apartments. It's got bed sits, and it's got good and bad tenants. You've got, you know, good tenants and bad tenants. And when you use an antibiotic, what you do is you wipe out good and bad. You don't know what you're wiping out, whether it's good or bad, and you don't know at what levels you're wiping out. And you cannot have empty accommodation. You can't have a void in the bird. And what comes back can quite often be worse than what you've got rid of. And unfortunately, the use and abuse of antibiotics over the years has allowed things to come into birds that shouldn't be there, you know, and you've no control over that. Now, the way we deal with homeopathy is we don't want to take anything out. We can't take anything out. But what we can do, instead of treating the symptoms with an antibiotic, we go to the source and switch it on so it no longer becomes a bad tenant. You know, coccidiosis, you know, all these things multiply under stress. I always say if you want to see mite in your shed, look for the most stressed bird. Excuse me. Now, this isn't Guinness, by the way, it's just Pepsi Max. Oh, on St. Patrick's Day, I could have had a Guinness there. Now, what we're looking at with birds is say we control everything in the 3 main areas. The environment. Birds in the wild get a brand new environment every 2 minutes. Oh, excuse me. This is the heart here. What you've got is when the wind blows, when it rains, when a bird flies to another perch, it gets a brand new environment. We control the environment the bird's in. And again, we walk into that environment as well. Now, what happens is when a bird's sitting there and people say, oh, I like a deep litter system, I like this, I like that. No, you're just lazy. You want to have a clean environment for that bird. You know, it's always got a risk of picking things up. And the less contact it has, the better with that. Now, just for example, when we talk about stress, this is something you might have heard me say in other talks, but it's to me, it points to everything. As an 18-year-old sitting in third year in agricultural college doing poultry and avian species, sitting in a microbiology class, and the lecturer comes in with a pigeon in a basket. And he says, right, we're going to find out what bacteria is growing in this bird's mouth. So he takes the pigeon out, gets a swab, rubs inside the pigeon's mouth, puts it on a petri dish with growth medium, puts the lid on it, and writes A. And for the next 10 minutes, he starts walking around with his pigeon underneath his arm. And after 10 minutes of walking around doing his lecture with his pigeon tucked under his arm, he goes, right, 10 minutes up, we'll find out what bacteria is growing in this bird's mouth. So he takes another swabs inside the bird's mouth, puts the bird in the basket, rubs it on another petri dish with growth medium, black marker, puts B on it, and he says, right, when you come back next week, we'll have this for 5 days growing and we'll find out what bacteria is growing in the bird's mouth. And so we come back the following week, we get the slides out, slide a little bit blue, a little bit green. Before computers, we get our textbooks out. Staphylococcus, Staph aureus, okay, pretty common stuff. B, World War III, every colour of the rainbow you could think of. And it was like, wait a minute, there's E. coli, there's salmonella, there's this, there's that. We'd identified 12 different things that wasn't there in the first swab that under stress that bird was under, it just multiplied. And what multiplies the quickest under stress is what symptoms you see. And cocci is one of these things, it's a classic. Cocci you can't see in the droppings, but when a bird's stressed out, cocci senses that stress in the bird and it says, this host is going to die. I need to start reproducing eggs, get out of the system so I can get into another host. And this is why our birds go light. Under stress, chicks coming out of the nest, they're under stress. You know, parents feeding too much, they're under stress. Cocci's everywhere. And it multiplies. And as that multiplies, other things multiply as well because of the stress that's caused by the cocci. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So we do have things that we can do to tackle that. When you use something for cocci or you do anything at all, you're wiping out good and bad, but you're dealing with the symptoms. You're not dealing with the cause. And I say what we like to do is with the homeopathic products we have, we can go in there and we can switch things on. So these tenants, whether it's cocci or salmonella or E. coli, you know, they're not going to become bad tenants. They're going to be, you know, still there, but they're not going to be an issue anymore. And again, you're getting 3 to 6 months cover with what we do through the drinking water. Now you're looking at the word stress. Again, nutrition-wise, you can have stress that way as well. 80% of the bird's immune system's a gut. And when you put something in that causes an upset to the gut, it's going to upset the immune system as well. And I say, I deal a lot with pigeons. In the last, 10 months, I've had about 1,300 brand new pigeon customers all come on with different bits and pieces. And what I love about these guys is they check their dropping boards every day. They can tell you exactly what's going on with the bird just by their droppings. And that's important. I think keeping canaries, I think we really, you know, should be looking at our droppings more every day because, okay, sometimes every bird reacts differently to stress, but if you've got an issue, the first time you usually see it, apart from the bird fluffed up, you know, is the droppings itself. So what we try to do is prevention. What we can do is we can turn around things within 24, 48 hours. You know, I don't make medical claims, and I'm not allowed to make medical claims, but I'm only interested in results. And the fact I've been doing this for 20 plus years now, and people still speak to me without swearing, is not a bad sign. We've just recently had the poultry industry come on board massively with this latest avian flu. I've probably got over 11 million birds in the UK now, 4 million at least in Scotland on our avian flu preventative. And again, it's a case of switching the immune system on so these things no longer become an issue. When you're talking about all these different things, all these birds have different things in them, and every bird has slightly different things in them. You know, accommodation wise, going back to the analogy of the block of flats, and they all react differently to things. And more, I'm hearing people say, "Oh, before the breeding season, I'll give them Baytril, or I'll do terramycin, I'll do auramycin." I have never understood why somebody would want to wipe the immune system out, spend money to wipe the immune system out, then just to try build it back up again. It just is beggars belief.
Colin, sorry, if I can ask, like, are you saying that like all our boards already have a small proportion of coccis or salmonella in us? Are you saying like when you talk about the tenants and stuff like that, like, are you saying that all the boards already have that in them?
Yeah.
And that what we're doing is stress is increasing what they already have, and we just need to control it more than like, you're not saying that we're, like, as you said, the broad spectrum antibiotic sort of wipes everything out. We're just trying to manage. The board has it. We just don't want it to multiply. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, every bird's got these things, and I say the classic is that pigeons have been used and abused for years. these that win races on antibiotics, they don't have old birds. They don't last long. A bird on antibiotics isn't a healthy bird. It's a propped up bird. I said the immune system is one of these things you need to have tip top, and the gut. And too many people wipe things out. And I always say there's one or two good pre and probiotics out there, but not many. You cannot. Most of them, if they're active in the gut, they're only active in the gut for 3 to 4 hours, and then it resorts back to its normal flora and fauna. If you want to put something in a bird, you'd have to do it a dozen times a day for weeks on end to establish something there. And even then, after you stop, it would probably go back to its normal flora and fauna. So when you wipe something out, you don't know what you're wiping out. And you don't know from the environment what's going to come back in to take that place. You might have E. coli and salmonella, which most birds have all these things. But it's controlled, and it's the good and bad tenant that they get on fine. It's only under stress that you might get two tenants that get together and start to cause havoc. It's not normally just one thing. It's a couple of things combined that cause the issues, where you get birds that are scurrying, enteritis, things like that. Again, cocces in everything. The poultry industry and the livestock industry around the world loses billions of pounds due to cocci. With livestock dying with cocci. And so we're no different in birds. Birds in the wild have it as well, but they're not under the same stresses at times as what we are. And you do get birds in the wild that will go down with cocci. But again, it's all that one word, stress. So
and like, what disease do you find, like in canaries particularly, outside the poultry industry, that we're dealing with? What do you find is a regular appearance on the sort of medical chart for you? Like,
there's three main things. One, cocci. When you get a bird that's going light, it's eating and eating and eating and getting thinner and thinner and thinner. That's cocci. That's classic cocci. But you'll also get maybe a wee bit of scare or enteritis that's going on with loose droppings. Again, stress. And the other main one is respiratory. Now, the main ones are infectious bronchitis and mycoplasma. That's the main two. But again, a lot of people with bullfinches and all the rest, you'll get herpes, which in pigeons is fat eye. You'll get herpes. And again, we've got products that will switch that on as a preventative. If you've got it in the past, stop it happening. Or if you want to turn a bird around 24, 48 hours, get it in the water, get it in the bird system, and you can switch that on so it no longer becomes an issue. Quite often I've had phone calls from people phoning up and saying, I've got a bird that's going light. You send BM307 out to them, they put it in the drinking water, and sometimes if the bird's not drinking that much, you want to put a couple of mils over the throat. And quite often 4 or 5 hours later, I'll get a phone call back saying, wow, that bird's picked up, it's no longer sitting fluffed up, it's no longer sitting on the seed dish. And it goes on to breed, and a couple of weeks later, that bird's sitting on eggs, Brilliant. That's what it's all about. But that's the main three areas that you've got. Now, you're talking about that's different health issues. When we're talking about the gut, you mentioned the top S there. Looking at nutrition-wise, what you need to look nutrition-wise is fresh. Food's got to be three things. It's got to be fresh, it's got to be palatable, it's got to be nutritious, and it's got to be digestible. You could have the most palatable food that's nutritious, but if it's not being digested, the bird's under stress getting the nutrients to maintain itself. And there's so many weird and wonderful mixes out there and so many different products out there. It's quite scary, for anybody. I always find that people start off with birds in the first year, 2 years. They do fantastic. The birds breed, they have no issues at all. And they start to get to know other people and, oh, you should try this, you should try that. And they start using so many weird and wonderful products. And they wonder why they don't do so well. It's that bird's got a digestive system, and the more stuff you put into it, the more that has to cope with that. And again, the immune system is impaired then, and it's under stress trying to cope with all these things. You've got fresh, whole, natural food. That's what it's all about. People, I for years have fed wheat soaked. Some of the seeds we get just now, like plain canary to me is rubbish. It's an absolute rubbish seed. And yet that's what most people feed. If you sprout it, you're lucky if you get 20% sometimes to germinate, to sprout. When you're looking at nutrition, people talk about protein and all the rest. You don't make protein from protein. You make protein from amino acid. That's acids. That's the building blocks of life is amino acids. So I always say the biggest bodybuilders in the world, gorillas, it's all plant-based amino acids. And when you look at the seeds we give our birds, some of these weird and wonderful mixes, you don't have to be a Scotsman to appreciate value for money. And when you look at some of these seeds, the small seeds, surface to bulk ratio, the husk on that seed means there's not a lot in the seed by the time you take the husk off. With a bigger seed, okay, some of the canaries, they don't eat that bigger seed like your hemps and all the rest, that, can have an issue. But you want a decent seed that's a decent size, You don't hear Sir David Attenborough saying, and the birds are looking for this seed and that seed and all the rest of the seed. Again, go back to we play God. They stand or fall by what we do, and we put in the seeds that we think are the best, but they're not always the best. Some of these weird and fun, wonderful mixes you get, you're better with just a decent sized seed, because there's not a lot of difference in the composition of these seeds. There might be slight trace elements and zinc and methionine, ever so slightly. But I always say, if you've got a seed that can reproduce itself, it's whole, it's complete. And when you start germinating things, you don't want to sprout. To me, you want to soak a seed so it starts the germination process. And when it starts the germination process, the composition of the seed changes to better nutrition. But if you sprout it, it's used some of that energy to sprout, and so you've lost a bit of the nutrition. That's why I say soak it to germinate, but not to sprout. And when you do that, you get better nutrition for the birds. And again, it's all about how easy and digested it is as well. When you're talking about egg foods, people always ask me, what's the best egg food you can recommend? Is it this? Is it that? Is the next thing? When you look at the composition of an egg food, you've got the ingredients most to the least. What you've got there is you've got usually bakery byproducts, which is what? Wheat. And so why would you buy something that's a byproduct and it's manufactured and processed, and you've got eggs in it and you've got colouring? When it's processed, it's not as palatable, I don't think, but it's not as nutritious either, and it's not as easy digested. When you heat something and you process it, you've taken something away from that, whereas you want fresh, whole, natural foods, germinated. So when it comes to egg food, I always say that egg is a phenomenal nutrient. You look at every single bird that lays an egg in the world, every single bird, the chick is always bigger than the yolk. You've got a few cells on a germinal disc that will multiply, the blood vessels go around, they absorb the yolk. The chick is always bigger than the yolk when it hatches out. Now, you take the amino acids and the essential vitamins and minerals and trace elements in a yolk that takes it from a few cells to day old, and you add that to the egg white. The egg white isn't used in producing the chick. The egg white's only there to hold it in the center. So it stops the yolk from going to the side and being for bacteria to get hold of it, and also for gas exchange. You look at the essential amino acids and non-essential in white that goes with the yolk, that will take it from day old right beyond with super nutrition. Birds in the wild, when they start to produce their youngsters, what you find is they'll go to insects, which is fantastic amino acids, fantastic proteins that is easy absorbed. And that's why you've got an accelerated growth rate in these birds, because when a chick's hatched, it goes into survival mode. These birds just don't go, well, we'll feed it and we'll leave it a few hours and we'll feed it, leave it. They're constantly feeding their chicks because they want to get these chicks up and out of the nest so they don't get eaten by a predator. So when you can put something like egg, which is a phenomenal nutrition, into them, the birds will still survive on seed because it's amino acids. But for the rearing period, you want to get super nutrition into that. And so to me, you can't beat boiled egg. You really can't beat it. And they talk about, you'll get salmonella. You can go to the highest mountain and you'll find salmonella. You can swab and find salmonella. You know, the worst carriers of salmonella are seagulls. And you never hear them saying, and the seagulls didn't breed this year because of salmonella. You know, it's how you manage that food. Like a raw egg out will attract bacteria. A boiled egg won't attract it the same way.
Do you think we've moved into a, like we have in life, I suppose? Do you think we've moved into an area of it's convenient to use these sort of products? Because like every year there seems to be 3 or 4 new products brought onto the market, whether it's an egg food, whether it's a bioamino acid you're trying to put into to protect the gut, or like have we moved like 20 years ago it was for me it was boiled eggs, arrowroot biscuits in a cup.
Yeah.
And then you fed the birds, and I reared probably just as many then as I did today, and that was like in like 1985, 1990. Like, so have we moved into it, the fact that it's convenient? Is that why we've moved away from soaked oats? And like I used to feed butcher's rusk as the bulking
Yeah.
agent.
No, Peter, you're spot on. It is convenience. And I think the interesting thing is with lockdown that people have had more time for their birds. And so they were experimenting with a few more things and they're having more time to do things properly, you know. But I'm only interested in results. Over the years, I've had so many companies approach me and saying, Colin, you've got a customer base. How about looking at this product and promoting this and promoting that? And I'll look at these things and I'll say, why? Why? You know, what's the benefit? Oh, it does this, it does that. Everything that's natural that isn't the best. Poison's natural, but you wouldn't give it to your birds. You know, people jump on little things and all these natural things like herbs and all the rest, and I use apple cider vinegar, I use garlic, I use this, I use that. They all have a reaction. But what I always say to people is, if you've been using something for years, great, but I'll do you a challenge. And I do this to lots of people. Take half a dozen of your birds and give them plain, simple, whole food and fresh water. Give them nothing. And see if there's any difference from them to the ones that you've got on all these weird and wonderful products in the water and all the mixes and all the rest. You come back within 2 weeks, Colin, there's no difference. Of course there's not. You might see initial reaction with some of these products, you know, great. But long term, it's doing nothing for them. And I always say, water should be fresh. If you put something in the water and it stops that from drinking as much, you're causing dehydration. You're upsetting the gut flora and fauna, which is all stress. You know, I've got people that have kept birds for years and they've been on my products and they keep things simple and fresh and whole and they're breeding with birds well beyond the age of other people. They don't lose birds to anything and their results are phenomenal. And it's all about one, fresh, whole, natural foods, fresh water, and putting the birds through seasons, bringing them in and out of cycle, you know. All too often, ours are on the same program all year round. There's nothing for the birds. You know, you've got to bring them in and out of season and in and out of cycle, you know, and that's just keeping it the same way as nature. You know, people that use apple cider vinegar a couple of times a week, you're just upsetting the bird's gut a couple of times a week. Garlic in the water sounds good. You'll not see a single vampire in your shed, guarantee, but it's not doing that much for the birds. You know, so you've got to look at what you're putting into that bird to maintain it, and not only maintain it, but to allow it to breed at the right time and you know, be as healthy as it can with that gut. Every time you put something weird and wonderful in it, you're spending money, which is a waste of money, but you're also upsetting that ecosystem of the bird, that block of flats. You want to maintain that so everybody's happy in there, you know. So it really isn't rocket science, but unfortunately, when you put a picture up, you know, I see it all the time. You'll get 15 different answers to the problem, and you'll get 15 different ways to sort it out. Now, people will tell you what they do, but quite often they won't tell you that it never worked for them, but they'll still tell you what to do. You know, and it beggars belief sometimes. Everybody's an expert. Everybody's an expert. But I say, you go back to it and you just take it down. And I always challenge people, put some of your birds on this program, keeping it simple, and keep the rest on the same and see the results. And sometimes it's days, weeks, you see no difference, or you see birds coming on. The amount of people I get that have birds with really dirty back ends and skittery nests and all the rest, and when you hear what they're feeding them, it's like, wow, how do you have time to look at your birds after the time you make all these things up and put all these things in? And when they take them off of that, the bird settles down and it just goes on to do what it's supposed to do without all the upset in the stomach and everything, you know.
Yeah.
So
Now last year there was obviously there was a lot of problems we found around the fives, around the fancy really, of hens abandoning chicks like after 4 to 5 days, and people were saying it was obviously a bit of coccyx or it was people who was red. Is that all to do with the flow and fauna in the gut, or what is that?
definitely, when there's different reasons for things happening at different times, and what you find is when you've got a chick that has been fed by a parent, everything that's going to go into that bird's coming from the parent. Now, if that bird's got a coxie, it's going to go into the chick. And what you find with coxie is that when it starts to multiply, because nests are stressful positions, and the stress coxie will multiply. And what you'll find is when that parent goes to feed it, if there's something going on in that gut, that chick, that bird will smell it as it's going, and it'll be repelled from it. You wouldn't want to kiss your wife if she'd had garlic, unless you'd had garlic yourself. It's the same thing for a bird. If there's something going on, it's repelled from it. So then it abandons it. But there's other reasons for birds abandoning nests. Quite often you'll have birds that are on more than 14 hours light, and that overstimulates the bird. So the bird comes in and out of cycle. Fertility, there's a lot of issues as well between lighting. There's different reasons why birds abandon, but coxie is one of the main ones. And people talk, and especially in the border canaries, about the black spot. Nobody's researched that. When you go and research it, you find lots of different things that are already in there. I'm always amazed when people that get their droppings tested and people that send a bird off for post-mortem. If you don't get a bird post-mortem within the hour of it dying, the chance of finding out what killed it is nil, because it's dead itself. You have to get, when we went in the poultry industry, we had an issue with our flock. We would take birds that were at death's door to the lab. They would get them, they would kill them there and then, and they would test them, and they would find out what was going on. A lot of times visually with the droppings, you can tell what's going on. The smell, you can always tell what's going on. But, to get a proper diagnosis, you need to have it within an hour of death. And because canaries isn't an industry, it's an industry of people manufacturing a lot of rubbish, but it's not an industry that's spent money researching and doing all this to find out exactly what these things are. And I think, personally, black spot is coxie behind it. There could be a couple of other things there, but coxie is the main thing that's behind all these issues. And, we've had people that have used it before the birds even go to rear chicks, and they have no use. In birds regards, they have something called a fledgling disease. Now, it was interesting, you're probably about 19 years ago now, I had birds that were going light. They were sitting on the dish, as you've seen canaries, eating and eating and eating and getting thinner and thinner and thinner. Now, I had a budgerigar with this, and I sent it down to the lab. I got a courier down, they killed it. They found megaback, they had coxie, and there was one or two other things there as well. So we got a remedy made up, and now that is BM307. Now, every bird with the same symptoms that gets that, everybody's happy with the results, or as a preventative. And in the same year, I had 12 pairs of birds up, and I had 8 pairs. The chicks were developing, they were getting scrawny, they were going dark colour, the rings were falling off them as they were starting to their feathers, they just went backwards and they died. Now, I sent a chick down, and they took a sample, got a remedy made up back again within a couple of days from the body of the chick. So what was in that was in the remedy that was made up. So what we did was I gave that to all the pairs that had them, a couple of drops over the throat of the birds, and I never lost another bird. But it wasn't until 2 years ago I was on Facebook and somebody says, "Oh, I've got an issue with Fledgling's disease." A phone calling up, sent me 321, which is the remedy that was taken from these chicks years ago with the same symptoms. And he showed a picture of them one day, and 24 hours later, after putting this over their throats, he showed the same chicks in the same position, but they're all pink again, and he went on to lose birds. And someone said, "Oh, when I get for that, I use 3-7." So even though we knew what was one from the first bird, which was Coxie and Megaback and a few other secondaries, we didn't know what was the chicks. But putting 2 and 2 together, the same issue in the chicks was the Coxie and the Megaback. And so the fact that he was using 307 to do the chicks just showed that it was the same thing. So now, we'll put that together, and that's brilliant, But it's a case of, we're not an industry, so we don't spend money researching all these things. And sometimes it's just guesswork, and then you'll get people, I tried basil, I tried this, I tried that, and none of these things seem to work. But the fortunate thing is on symptoms, and looking at the drop-ins, looking at the signs from the bird. We've got a great idea now. We don't have to get them tested to know exactly what's going on, because the symptoms, we deal with symptoms. And that makes all the difference. So when people phone up and say, "I've got this, I've got that," I ask enough questions to find out the picture. What's the diet like? What's this like? What's that like? And I say, 9 out of 10 times it's not rocket science. It's something basic, and there is easy answers out there.
And the way the top S, is the top S sort of to create a balance in the gut, or?
What the top S does is, these pre and probiotics waste of money. If you get somebody that puts their money back guarantee on it, jump at it. Because if it's, I put money back guarantees and products because my attitude is, why would you pay for something if it doesn't work? And if more companies did that, there wouldn't be that many products there. I'll be honest with you. So with the top S, you're not putting anything into the bird. You can't put something that's not there already. But what it does is it creates the environment in the gut, so billions of its own good bacteria multiply. All the nutrients stripped out of the food. It's like putting more good tenants into that block of flats than bad tenants. You're still going to have bad tenants there. You've sorted it out with your homeopathic products to switch it on. But when you get all the nutrients stripped out of the food, then the bird can thrive. That's why when you're feeding parents in the top S, the chicks just grow at such a fast rate. That's why you're looking to ring your birds 2 days early, or else you'll struggle to get rings on. The amount of phone calls I get every year from people, especially British birds, the last thing you want is to have birds unrung in your aviaries, and people will phone up and say, "I ring on that bird," and they'll say, you read the label, didn't you? Yeah, but I didn't believe it. There's not a lot I can do, That's they didn't believe it, and they didn't, pay attention to the bird. But when you get birds leaving the nest of all varieties, 3 to 5 days, they're far better feathered. People breeding greenfinches, they don't go light, because they're coming straight out of the nest and going on the ground and picking away and picking away and picking away, coming out and they're going straight across to the flying straight across to the perches, and so they're not getting that stress, and they're actually getting picked up as much. So, the benefits of that is, a healthy gut's a healthy bird. And some people are using it every day. I've got dogs and cats that have got silly money a month on steroids because of skin conditions and different things. And they go onto the top S, just light dusting. And before the end of the month, they're off the steroids looking fantastic. It's all about the gut. You are what you eat.
So what are we talking about?
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Colin gave us some time, obviously, to Fred. Obviously, Fred's my partner in Canaries, Fred Grimmer, Colin. Yeah?
Right.
And they've got 12 working cockers, and one went really bad, losing weight. Given this top S, it has improved them. I mean, it's unbelievable what he has done. And I just want to put that out to Colin, you know what I mean? Fred can't do these things. and he's well appreciated what we've done.
I appreciate the feedback, and I say I'm only interested in adults. That's all that interests me, you know. And when you get people and you hear them, and believe it or not, I've had probably about 5 phone calls in the last 2 weeks from people with just individual birds, budgies, 1 or 2 budgies in the house, and they're going to vets and the minimum one was charged was 120 quid, and they still didn't get to the problem. And some of them have been charged. One woman was £360, and one woman was £1,200 for one budgie, going through all the tests and weird and wonderful things. It's like mental, absolutely mental. It's keeping things basic, and it goes back to that one word: stress. The environment, nutrition, and health. You know, and I say when you see animals suffering, and what scares me is what they do. They call practice, and they practice on us. And you know, I think some of these boys have been getting, you know, pigeon boys and all types have been getting ripped off for years, and it really scares me the use and abuse of antibiotics. People think these 2-headed frogs down in the pond is inbreeding. It's not. When you use an antibiotic, it goes into the environment and it's into the water and it goes everywhere, and it doesn't just disappear overnight. And it's causing all these issues. I don't know if any of you saw the program last night. It just shocked me big time, the truth about antibiotics. And what they had was, they said E. coli, and they showed this test, and they said antibiotics are just not working. And they said it's not, it's the things are mutating to combat them. It's not that, you know, it's new ones coming along. They had a slide, and it was so interesting because on the outside they had no antibiotic, and they had a line, and they had a 1% antibiotic, 10% antibiotic, 100% antibiotic, and the one in the middle was 1,000 times percentage strength of antibiotic. And they put E. coli on the outside, which grew because there was no antibiotic. And then it was stopped for a short while, going into the 1%, but then it mutated and it started to grow, and then it went into the 10%. And even at the end of a period of time, that E. coli started to grow in the 1,000% strength antibiotic because it had mutated all that way. So all the things that are out there are starting to mutate because of antibiotics. They say, with the homeopathy, we go to the symptoms, we go to the cause, not the symptoms, and switch it on. And so it will never not become immune. It's the frequency. You know, when you get a little bottle, you know, you're talking 2 mils into a litre of water, you knock it 30 times on the day of use, you activate in the homeopathy, you drop 2 mils or a capful, put it into a litre of water, and you leave it there for half an hour. It's multiplied to full strength. And from that, if you need 5 litres, 10 litres, 20 litres, 50 litres to do yours, you use that 1 litre. You use the 1 litre, make it, do your drinkers, and for 5 days, just keep on putting the water up, and it multiplies to full strength. Can you imagine you go on a big commercial poultry farm and 50,000 birds in a couple of sheds, and you're putting 20 mils into 2 litres of water, you're leaving half an hour, then you're putting to 20 litres and then dividing it into hair ranks. And the classic was, I got a phone call from one of the farmers, and he says, "Colin, what have you done to my birds?" I goes, "What do you mean?" He says, "I went into them, 50,000 birds, all lying on their backs wearing sunglasses. They were so chilled. I've never seen them so relaxed." And I'm glad they were wearing sunglasses. If they were lying on their backs without sunglasses, I'd be thinking. But, you know, that's what you see. And when you see big commercial farms coming on board, and people look at you and say, "Wait a minute, 20 mils, knock the bottle 30 times." And they don't believe you. But when they see the results of birds, when you've got commercial farms, the production, the performance is way past standard. They're losing virtually no birds, and the birds are relaxed. That's what it's all about, you know. But it's not rocket science, but it's the results. And it's people say, "Oh, you must be a millionaire. You've got 11 million birds on that." It's costing these guys 400,000 birds. It's costing £20 a month. That's nothing. these companies have been using antibiotics, different issues, and the bottom line is 6 weeks they're putting these things in. It's not cheap, and nothing's happening, and they're finding more and more that nothing's happening. So when they're coming to me, they're getting something that is costing them nothing, but they're seeing results. And so I'm probably one of the most hated people from the vets just now because they must be losing a fortune, an absolute fortune. But at the end of the day, it's all about the environment as well as just the results, you know. And when, you know, just the last week there, I did 4 million birds in Scotland and went around a number of farms. When a farm manager comes up to you with a smile on his face, so pleased to see you because he's getting results and he's getting more in his pocket because he's getting paid on production and performance. And when you see that, you can't beat that. You cannot beat that. But you say, when a company comes around and says, Colin, we've dealt with you for 2 years now. We've had in the last 4 months, every single farm, every single bird on your stuff. We've virtually had no health issues whatsoever. We've never had that. We've never had a period where there hasn't been an issue with this farm or that farm, that farm. For the last 4 months, we've had nothing.
Yeah.
You know,
and then, Colin, like obviously moving on from obviously the health of the bird, it's the sort of bane of not only the Fife Canary world, but every sort of word. It's sort of the dreaded mite. And the cycle of dreaded mite. We all, like, I don't think there's anyone probably on tonight or anyone that I know that has never not had mite at some stage. And like it's the bane of everyone's life. Like, so like, where do you sort of sit with that? Like, obviously I used the clear check mite and probably many others, and there's loads of people that use it, but like the cycle of mite and things like that, if you can talk a bit about that, like, it'd be great.
Yeah. Thing is, people don't realise mites. There's thousands of different types of mites. Fodder mites. There's feather mites. There's lice. There's thousands of different types. What I love about the clean and clear check mite, I was approached over 20 years ago now. I was approached by a chap. I was at a poultry dinner, and this guy comes up to me and says, I'm told you're the man that knows everybody in the poultry industry. I said, I don't think I know everybody, but I know the people who, make decisions. Yeah. He said, I've got this product here. I'd like you to look at it and tell me what you think. If you can help me, I'll give you 5% of everything I sell. So I said, okay, fair enough. I'll have a look at it. So I looked at the product. I looked at some of the big farms that were trialing it out and spoke to them and said, that's good stuff. Colin does the job. Yeah, red mite kills them. Yeah. So I was right, okay. So I gave the guy all the contacts I had and I phoned people up and said, look, this guy's going to call. It's worth looking at this. So he went around and he did phenomenal. He went around all the big poultries. He went across to Europe, with some contacts and did a fantastic job. And then all of a sudden, I started to promote this as well. And then all of a sudden, he changed manufacturer. He cut it in half. And it was working. And then he cut it in half again. And it was still working, but I didn't think it's good. So he ended up taking license off one of the manufacturers. And so for a couple of years, I just did nothing with it. Then the manufacturer came back and says, look, we've got the license back. We can do this product. And it's right, okay. I says, I'll do it on one condition. You make it as strong as possible. I'm a salesman. I hate the thought of sending water through the post. You can turn the tap on and get water. Why are you going to send it through the post? So they manufactured it, and I went through to them, and I says, right, okay, how do I know it's the strongest? They've got it. He says, we knew you'd ask that. So what they did was showed me at 1% stronger, and it like gel, it's a clean and clear there. It was like layers of jelly. It just wasn't, a proper liquid because it was too concentrated. So I was happy that I'd got it as most concentrated as possible. And as opposed to the product that was diluted down, this is super concentrated. And say when I get in manufactured, that's the only way it's done. Now, I learned recently this product that was the original product has now been changed the formulation to meet EU standards, which is biggest belief because we're at the EU now, but it no longer kills mite. So what I've got with a clean and clear check is it's a virucidal, bactericidal, fungicidal disinfectant that's food safe. But I put a money back guarantee on it because, again, Why would you use something and it doesn't work and pay for it? It's beyond me. So there's 3 different ways people use the clean and clear. As I've said, we play God at these birds. We call the environment. We walk into that environment. Now, the first way is 100 mils per litre. Spray it. It kills mites and eggs on contact. It turns them dark green. You see them dying in front of you. The mode of it, the way it does it, is it takes the positive ions off of dirt and grease, and it takes the positive ions on their skin coat and turns negative, and so it dehydrates. And with dirt, it's fantastic. So 100 mils per litre will kill contact. If you miss a bit, we'll come back. You can spray the birds. I always say 20 mils per litre on the birds, not a problem. Any stronger than that, doing it a few times, you'll take the sheen off the bird's feathers. So if you had lice or mites on your birds, you could do a one-off 50 mils per litre, and that'll kill mites and eggs on the birds. I say you want to get the cracks and crevices, tops of cages, sides, But the good thing about it being a liquid, it goes into all these areas quite easy, Say if you miss a bit, it's not residual, will come back eventually. 20 mils per litre, it's a fantastic cleaner. You're looking at spraying it on, wiping it on, leave it 20 minutes, allow it to turn the positive ions and dirt and grease negative. You're not scrubbing anything. Drinkers and feeders, put them into a bucket of cold water at 20 mils per litre, leave it 20 minutes, and you're not scrubbing feces, you're just wiping it clean. Again, got people with dermatitis, athlete's foot, they've had psoriasis, and they'll spray it on, and their athlete's foot's gone. They'll soak their feet in it, and the athlete's foot gone. The dermatitis is gone. I had one guy came up to me in Stafford, and he was wearing long shorts, and he says, "Look, my legs." And he goes, "Uh-huh." He says, "I started spraying your Clean and Clear Checkmate last month, and I noticed there that my dermatitis on the legs, where it was getting in the spray, is gone." And then he lifted the legs up, and you saw his knees, and they're just red raw with dermatitis. I says, "Well, what about that?" He said, "Only realised it 2 days ago." He phoned me 2 weeks later, he'd done his legs, and his dermatitis was gone. It's the mode of action. Mold, spores, viruses, funguses, bacteria, it kills them on contact, And so with mites, it's fantastic. With mold, spores, funguses, cleaning. But the main one I love is people with chest problems and asthma. They'll go to their shed and with masks on, sometimes after 20 minutes, they're wheezy, they're tight-chested, and have to come out. And the amount of people I've had in years who thought they were going to have to give up birds, and what they're doing is 10 mils per litre, it's not a lot, into the main body of the shed, walking backwards, misspray. Doesn't matter if it's 10 mils yet, if it hits the birds, the feed, the water, anything, not an issue. It's bringing the dust down. You can do water and it'll bring the dust down, but then you're creating a moist atmosphere, virus and bacteria to grow. But with the 10 mils per litre in, you're bringing the virus and bacteria levels down as well. And a lot of people with COPD and chest problems, it's the dust, it's the particles that cause the issues with the wheeziness and that. And people spray that, they're in there for hours without a mask. I even have people that, they're in the house and they spray it, and their wife with COPD no longer has the same health with the breathing. You see the light coming into your house sometimes, and you see the dust and the sunbeam. We're breathing all the time. Whereas if you do a quick misspray at 10 mils per litre, bringing that down, the whole atmosphere for your lungs is totally different for you and the birds. So to me, that's what I love the most, is when people phone up saying, "Wow, I can breathe again going into the shed, what a difference, And there's people in their 80s and 90s still keeping birds because they use it, and that's what it's about. Simple product, food safe, again, money guarantee. But when it comes to mite, we do another one as well. Again, this has gone down very well in the big commercial farms, the big poultry farms, the egg producers and that. They have a big issue with mite, and they just eat the birds alive, and it causes stress in the birds. It affects production and performance and mortality. Whereas BM310 is red mite parasite, and what that does is the same 2 mils per litre in drinking water for 5 days, and it switches the bird on so that mites don't feed off it. And so big commercial farms, they'll say, oh, we still have red mite, but they're dark. They're not red because they're not sucking off the birds. They're not eating off the birds. And so when you can put that in combination with the clean and clear, you're trying to make a bulletproof bird that isn't going to have the same mite issues and stress with the mites, But again, super simple product and food safe. And that's what it's about. There was chemicals out there, but these chemicals are banned now because what people don't realize is, in the poultry industry, I used to deal with a lot of old guys, and some of these guys have nervous system issues because they were using some of these chemicals without protection. And when you saw them in years gone by after they retired, they were just wrecks because they just abused their own system with chemicals. So we've got to be aware of that as well. It's all about the environment that we can recreate, control.
Yeah.
So no, a very simple product, but it just does the job.
Yeah. Any questions there, lads? We've had sort of Colin here for just over an hour, so if anyone has any questions or any queries that you'd like to sort of bang out there, you can just unmute yourselves, no problem at all.
The first thing I'd like to say is whatever it wasn't me. I'll make that clear.
I'm not taking the blame for anything.
Not at all.
Colin, I cut off halfway through there. Can I?
You were then.
Can I put clear and check in my backwater or not?
Yeah, not a problem. I would say 10 mils per litre is fine. You'll not get any algae growing. You'll not have any issues. Birds can drink it. Not a problem at all. And if you put it too strong, I say over 20 mil, it will start to take gene off the bird's feathers. But up to 20 mils in the bathwater is not a problem. But if you can do 10 mil, it does the same job. But job is 20. It's going to go twice the distance. Not a problem.
That's 10 mils per litre.
10 mils is grand, yeah.
Right, can you give us the names of it again, slowly in English? Click and clear.
Clean and clear checkmate.
Clear.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Clean and clear checkmate.
Clean and clear, right.
Checkmate, yeah.
Best product you've ever come across.
If you know anybody that suffered, I had a guy phone me up and he said, Colin, tongue in cheek, I said to my daughter's mother-in-law, I couldn't quite get the relation, but she said she suffered for 60 years with psoriasis and she doesn't sleep at nights, hasn't slept at nights for years because of the itching. And she said, oh, try this stuff. I've heard this is good for athlete's foot. Now, she got it made up in 20 mils per litre, sent away to her on the Sunday. Sunday she used it. The Monday she phoned back and says, I can't believe I had a fantastic sleep last night. I dabbed it on my skin all over the place. And within 2 days, it's 85% gone. It says, I've tried everything for years to try to get rid of this. And this is the only thing that's done the job. And she could not believe within one night, the one day, the night's sleep she had, 85% gone after a couple of days, and that's life-changing for people. People are suffering with athlete's foot and suffering all these things, and it's amazing just what a simple thing can do,
So what are your thoughts on this apple cider vinegar then? I started using it about three years ago because I had 2 or 3 chicks that went light.
Right.
Somebody said to me to use it for a week and then 3 weeks on plain water and then back on for a week. And I'm doing that for 3 years now. And
Right.
I've only lost 1 chick in those 3 years. Now,
Right.
but what is it actually doing to the gut? I know it does something to the gut, but is it what you were saying? It completely clears it out and you're starting fresh, or
It doesn't completely clear it out, but it upsets the gut fauna.
right?
And they say birds. I always say if you put something in the water, stops the bird drinking, you're causing stress dehydration wise.
Right.
Now, I always say put something in the water, put fresh water with nothing in it, see where the birds go to. They tell you what they want and need. And I say you'll probably find you've never had a single issue with some of these things, but it's acid pH. Things like lemon juice is good because it's acidic. you think, oh, you're making it acidic. No, you turn it alkaline. Now, in humans, acid.
For baby.
Yeah, one sec.
In
Okay.
humans,
Hang on.
Down the skull.
Okay.
cancer only grows in an acid-aged body. When you turn your body into alkaline, it stops cancer growing. In 1930, the German scientist won the Nobel Prize for discovering that. Now, I've recommended to so many people with health issues, get slices of lemon, put it into water, and drink it. For 2 days, keep on topping it up, and then refresh it every 2 days with fresh sliced lemons. People with arthritis and other issues, it helps the lymphatic system, it helps the system work, it turns the body alkaline. Apple cider vinegar is turning it a little bit acidic, and what that will do, it will affect the gut-borne fauna. Now, I always say these aren't healthy birds, they're propped up birds. I would rather you switch the immune system on for cocci than do something like that is upsetting the gut flora and fauna. Years ago, I used to keep birds and they would live forever. You were breeding with budgies that were 8 and 10 years old, still filling eggs. Now you're lucky if you get a bird 2 or 3 years old that's filling eggs, of all types of birds. And we're putting so many things into them that long term is not good for the bird. You get away with it for a period, but long term it's not good.
Right, so I throw my cider vinegar away, and what is your product that is beneficial?
I would say 307.
What?
V307 is Coxy
307.
Megapack. It switches a few things on as well as Coxy, and we don't get rid of Coxy in the environment. The clean and clear check mite will kill Coxy on contact. That's the good thing about that. But in the bird, it will always pick things up. But when you switch them on with this for 3 to 6 months, it just goes through them and goes through them. 306 is Coxy Wormer. Again, great job every 3 months. I have people use it on their dogs as well, and they'll turn around and say, wow, I didn't realize my dog had worms. They're using tablets and the dog's sick with them and all the rest. They put this on, they're not sick, and all of a sudden they see worms coming out. Job done.
Right.
Job done. But one other thing I'm going to mention, probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago, time's just gone in, but I started asking all my customers, and I probably had about over 7,000 customers using my stuff regular, of all types of bird species and the who's who of bird keepers and everybody else in between. And I started saying, how's your seasons going? What do you do? And what's this, what's that? What's your program? And over the period of 6 months, there was 15 guys with all types of birds, pigeons, canaries, British borders, parrots, everything, that stood out a mile. And they were all using my products, but some of them weren't using my vitamins. Now, I had vitamins, minerals, trace elements in a chelated solution. And the way it works in a chelated solution is it goes into the system and it goes onto the liver, and it's there as a reserve, and it's slow release and balanced. Now, we'd go onto the farms with cattle and sheep, and for sheep, it was 5 ml drench over the throat, because sheep don't drink that much. And cattle, it was 10 mils per head in the troughs. And you say to the farmers, the vitamin and mineral buckets you've got, you'll find within a week they don't go near them. Take them out of the fields. And 4 months later, put them back. So the cattle would get the reserve, the sheep would get the 5 mil drench, so the reserve was on the liver. And what you would find then is that they would phone up, yep, that's them off the buckets, so they'd take them out. And what they would do next is they would say, 4 months later, put them out. And then sometimes 4.5, 5, 6 months, you get a phone call. That's them back at the buckets calling, well, I need some more vitamins. So that would save them a fortune, because they had it in them as a reserve. So all these 15 guys, not one of them used my vitamins. And I thought, wait a minute, these guys are getting phenomenal breeding results. They were getting birds that are way, way older than anybody else breeding, and they're doing fantastic. They're virtually losing no birds. And so I stopped selling it. But what I didn't appreciate, what these guys were doing, they were all of them were putting their birds through seasons, in and out of cycle, bringing them in for breeding, bringing them back out again, and resting them, having a rest period. But they were all feeding the fresh, whole, natural foods, and it was all simple stuff. They were using the homeopathic remedies, they were using the top S and the clean and clear. But it was the vitamins they weren't using, so I stopped selling them. But what I didn't appreciate was that not everybody was feeding as good as them whole, fresh, natural foods. You know, you shouldn't need all these additives. If you've got something that's complete, it's reproducing itself, so you don't need extra things. But there's things being fed there that aren't quite so good. So yes, you do. So I've been trying since last August to get this manufactured again, and the company, the factory burnt down, and I've only literally this week got it back again. But it's 2 mils per litre in the drinking water in a chelated solution of vitamins, minerals, trace elements. It's got everything, but it goes onto the bird's liver and it sits there as a little reserve, and it's slow release and balanced. So every 2 months, mils per litre for 2 days, that's all you need just to top it up again. And say, if you've got a bird that's gone down, maybe birds, you can't, if you feed the right nutrition to a bird, you'll not tax it. If it's laying eggs, if it's rearing youngsters, as long as you're putting the nutrients in, a bird will take every single ounce of calcium out of its bones to put a shell around an egg before it doesn't put a shell around an egg. But if you don't put the nutrients in and deplete that bird, you'll see it going down. Again, that's where cocci comes in and starts to multiply under stress and other things. But, you know, if you had a bird that was dead, or the system locked up, what you can do is you can put 1 mil into 10 mils and then put a couple of mils over the throat, or spread it on the water, on the food, sorry, and get it into the bird system to replenish it again, you know. So that's a good thing to have, I say, just as a little backup, you know.
Colin, just as you spoke there, you spoke about obviously about calcium intake, and we're all sort of, well, a lot of people are obsessed with different types of sort of added calcium. And we asked the question of everyone that's ever done an interview with us here on the Zoom room. We've always asked, grit or not to grit? Do you think birds are using the grit, or whether it's not? I've always used it. Do I tell you there's a benefit? I don't know. I've always used it. It doesn't seem to do them any harm. And then in the likes of cuttlefish bone, and do we really need to be giving it extra calcium every year? Like, is it back to that whole food argument again?
The simple answer is yes, yes, and yes. The last 50 years of keeping birds, every type of bird I've had, toucans, macaws, cockatoos, lories, lorikeets, you know, birds are pretty, everything, I've always had grit. If it needs it, it'll take it. There's a couple of reasons for grit. Grit goes into the gizzard. Okay, it goes into the crop, it goes into the gizzard. Now, the gizzard is a very, very strong muscle that grinds up all the food. Now, when they put grit in there, it helps to grind up the food. They're also getting trace elements, you know, you can also get calcium. If a bird needs it and it's there, it'll go for it. The biggest problem these days is there's so many companies putting aniseed into grit. And when you put it down, the birds are straight at it. Oh, that's good stuff. They must need it because they go for it. No. You put stale food with aniseed on it and the birds will go for it. You want grit to be nothing but grit. There's so many different grits, minerals, trace elements that you can buy. Get something without aniseed. Have it there. If the birds need it, they'll get it. Same with cuttlefish. The bird's looking for it, it goes for it. You know, I've seen wild birds go into the walls and almost like picking off the lime because they're lacking something. You know, it's there. It's required. If they have it, they'll go for it. But again, liquid calcium. Every year I get phone calls from people. I've got really bad infertility. Loads and loads of clear eggs. Now, there's 2 reasons for clear eggs. I always ask 2 questions of them. And quite often, one of them comes back, and that's the cause. If you've got clear eggs, if you put birds over 14 hours light, you overstimulate the pituitary gland. And then the birds will come in a cycle. Now, if you want to get the birds in cycle again, bring them down below 14 hours light, maximum 14 hours light. You know, even birds in the summertime, you know, they don't have 14 hours light. It's all about light intensity. You know, a bird, the difference between light and darkness for a bird is 100 lux. You know, so if you had your lights set at 150 lux and you turn them down to 50 lux, the bird will switch off as night and day. But when you have constantly 14 hours of stimulation. You overstimulate the birds, the cocks will come in out of cycle, hens will come in out of cycle. That's sometimes why you get birds that will sit, they'll lay eggs, they'll rear chicks, and then they'll come off and they'll go on, they'll come off, they'll go on. It's all overstimulation, you know. And then liquid calcium. People will use liquid calcium, they'll use calcium. Quite often the calcium isn't always absorbed. It'll go through the bird, but what is absorbed, it'll turn a cockbird sterile. Cocks don't need calcium, you know, to the same extent as a hen does, and it will turn the cockbird sterile. You take it off the calcium, and all of a sudden, you'll find within a couple of weeks, come back in again. You know, fortunate I've been in the poultry industry, and they've spent millions and millions and millions on research over the years because it's an industry. It wants to make money, and so they've researched all these things. And liquid calcium is one of these things, and cockbirds, it just turns them sterile. But, you know, people advocate it, people sell it, and I'm thinking, why? Go back to your things like your spinach, your broccolis, you know, all these things. Spinach is a phenomenal nutrient. Again, it's all about amino acids, it's all about trace elements. There's enough vitamin K in one leaf to do half a daily dose of a human in one leaf of spinach. How many more good nutrients is in that, you know, for a bird? So giving them things like that regular, you know, that people, when they see me feeding my spinach to my birds, I put handfuls into the flights and the cages, and people, what are you doing? You don't get green scour. No, it's good nutrition. It's amino acids. It's all those things, and the birds love it. And it's, again, more moisture for the birds as well. So, you know, you've got to try create what the birds would get in the wild. And the birds have access to whatever they need in the wild. And if they need it, they'll look for it and they go and get it. If you don't get in your cage, your bird's stuffed. And if you put grit in a seed, the bird will eat it. The amount of people have felt with pigeons and that, and there's so many birds they're not eating. There's so much grit down, it's compacted the crop and the gizzard, and the bird just can't eat anymore. And, you know, it's stopping the whole system working. But yeah, if they need it, they'll go for it. If it's there, great. If not, the bird's stuffed.
Like, that's very interesting, Colin. Like, now, like, we're all sort of striving, obviously, to give the birds the best thing, and sometimes we're probably realizing now that we're not giving them the best by trying to give them the best. We're trying to overcomplicate maybe the diet of a canary, you know, like because we are trying to, at the core of all bird keepers is we're trying to give the birds the best, to get the best performance, to get the best shine, to get the best type, to breed as many youngsters at the shortest time we can. But I get the impression that we're definitely, for me, that I seem to be giving them too much.
It's coming out of your pocket. It's not doing any good for the birds. When you talk about birds coming in out of cycle, the birds are switched on by three things when it comes to breeding. One is light intensity and day length. The other one is the availability of food, and the other one is the bird's body. Birds have a fighting weight. You look at the birds in the wild, and they go through seasons. You know, they're forced through seasons. The availability of food, light intensity, and their own body weight. When a bird goes through the winter, it's leaning off. It's still getting nutrition, but it's not getting as much. It's not carrying fat. So when it comes into springtime, and all of a sudden there's availability of food, it increases its body weight. It says the system says there's availability of food for my youngsters I can now produce, and it's been stimulated by the light, you know. And one thing I've used for years, and I learned this as a kid, you know, as a 6-year-old up, I was around every single person that kept birds in the villages. I was like a sponge. Canary boys, British boys, you know, pigeon boys. I was into everything. One of the things I picked up was hemp. Hemp is a phenomenal nutrition. It's great proteins, great amino acids that's very easy absorbed. And when any type of birds I've kept, I've always put, a week before I wanted to pair up, dishes of hemp. And what you find is they start to take the hemp, it stimulates them, saying there's availability of food, and it starts to put a bit of body weight on very quickly. And so the bird starts to come into condition. And there's some people say, oh, I use hemp and it overstimulates the cocks. No, it's you don't want to do too much, but it's great nutrition. Again, for feeding chicks, You soak hemp, you start the germination process. It's easy absorbed. It's a bit softer, and it's great nutrition. And these people that say that the cockbirds are too overstimulated, they must be given way too much. But hemp is a phenomenal seed just to bring birds in.
Yeah, we sort of we'll wrap it up there. If anyone has any more questions, that'd be great. If there's no more, Colin, you couldn't pass us on your contact details or just give us an email address or something there. If the lads want to contact you to try and purchase anywhere, give us an agent who sells it, or we buy it direct from yourself. Because obviously I'll post that onto the council page, and after this talk is actually going onto YouTube, and we'll count all your details so we can get in contact to try and get these products, if that's all right.
Listen, not a bother, Paul. It's anybody's got any issues, I'm always at the end of the phone. If you leave a message, I'll always call you back. The amount of people say, I've been trying to get hold of you for weeks, Colin. You leave a message? No. I'll let you into a wee secret. I'm not really psychic. I don't know if you don't leave a message, But no, I say it's not rocket science. What we're dealing with is not rocket science. It's very easy. And I like people to keep it simple, keep it fresh, keep it whole, and let the birds do what they do best. But I say I have a 4 seasons program. We do different programs and different wee things, but it is very easy to follow. It's got to be proof because I've used it for years myself,
Yeah. Listen, Colin, that's been fantastic. I really appreciate the fact you've come on and had a chat with us. I really do. We'll get you on again at the end of the season, see how everyone's, because obviously we'll have different people on it. I'm obviously on the stuff at the moment. We got it through the post. So, yeah, we'll get you back on at the end of the season, and we'll see how many lads have taken it on, and we'll discuss their results and see how it goes. So, thanks very much for coming on, Colin. Thanks very much.
All the best, guys. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
All the best.
Cheers.